The arrival at Sterling Station. Marcus Kane had collected debts from warlords, smugglers, and crime bosses across 3-star systems, but he'd never collected one from nobility before. Sterling Station gleamed against the backdrop of space like a jewel, all polished chrome and crystalline viewports, the kind of place where people like him usually weren't welcome. His ship, the Reckoning, looked distinctly out of place among the sleek yachts and luxury vessels docked in the station's elite bay. The docking master had tried to redirect him to the cargo section, but Marcus had flashed the official debt certificate sealed with Lord Vexthor's own mark. That had changed the conversation quickly. Marcus checked his reflection in the polished metal of the airlock. He'd cleaned up for this meeting, trading his usual worn spacer gear for a dark suit jacket over a simple gray shirt. His face still carried the scars of his profession, a thin line across his left cheekbone, another through his eyebrow, but his green eyes were sharp and focused. The debt was straightforward. Lord Vexthor of the Zentari noble house had wagered heavily on an illegal zero-gravity combat tournament 3 months ago. He'd lost spectacularly, betting on enhanced fighters against natural humans. The human had won, as they often did when everyone underestimated them. Vexthor owed Marcus's client 50,000 credits, and Marcus's fee was 10% of whatever he collected. Easy money. Or so he'd thought. The station's interior was even more opulent than its exterior suggested. Floating gardens drifted past on anti-gravity platforms, exotic plants from a dozen worlds blooming in impossible colors. The air smelled of expensive perfumes and something Marcus couldn't identify, probably some alien delicacy that cost more than his ship. A Zentari servant, tall and slender with the characteristic silver skin and black eyes of his species, met Marcus at the entrance to Lord Vexthor's private quarters. "You are the debt collector?" the servant asked, his tone suggesting Marcus was something unpleasant he'd found on his shoe. "Marcus Kane," he replied evenly. "Lord Vexthor is expecting me." The servant's expression suggested this was highly irregular, but he led Marcus through corridors lined with art and artifacts worth fortunes. They finally reached a grand chamber where Lord Vexthor waited. The Zentari noble was impressive in the way predators were impressive. Tall, silver-skinned, with elaborate facial ridges that denoted his high rank. He wore robes of deep purple silk, and his fingers were adorned with rings that probably cost more than Marcus earned in a year. "Ah, the human debt collector," Vexthor said, his voice smooth and cold. How delightfully primitive, handling such matters personally. Marcus had dealt with arrogant nobles before. He kept his expression neutral. "I'm here for the 50,000 credits you owe. Transfer them, and I'll be on my way." Vexthor smiled, showing teeth that were slightly too sharp. "Yes, about that. I find myself in a temporary liquidity situation." Marcus's jaw tightened. "The debt is due today." That was the agreement. "Indeed," Vexthor agreed. "And I intend to honor it. However, I propose an alternative form of payment. The unexpected payment." Before Marcus could respond, Vexthor gestured toward a side entrance. The door slid open with a whisper, and Marcus's prepared argument died on his lips. The woman who entered was breathtaking in a way that transcended species. She was Luminari, Marcus realized, one of the rarest species in the known galaxy. Her skin had an opalescent quality, shifting through subtle shades of pearl and silver as she moved. Her eyes were pure gold, large and expressive, framed by long lashes. Hair like spun moonlight fell in waves past her shoulders. She wore a gown of ice blue fabric that seemed to flow like water, elegant and modest yet somehow highlighting every graceful line of her slender figure. Delicate silver jewelry adorned her wrists and throat. "This is Lady Seralith," Vexthor announced. "My wife. She will serve as payment for my debt." Marcus stared in disbelief. "You're joking." "I assure you, I am entirely serious," Vexthor replied. "Seralith is worth considerably more than 50,000 credits. Her bloodline is ancient, her beauty renowned across 6 systems. Consider this generous compensation." "People aren't currency," Marcus said flatly, his hand instinctively moving toward the weapon concealed beneath his jacket. Even out here on the frontier, that's not how things work. Dexthor laughed, a cold sound. How charmingly idealistic. But you're mistaken, Mr. Kane. Among my people, marriage contracts are business arrangements, nothing more. This contract can be transferred just like any other asset. Marcus looked at Lady Seralith, expecting to see fear or resignation. Instead, her golden eyes met his with surprising intensity. There was something in her gaze, not pleading, but urgency. This is insane, Marcus said. I came for credits, not complications. And yet, complications have found you, Dexthor replied smoothly. Take my wife and consider the debt settled, or leave with nothing. Those are your options. The lady's secret. Might I have a moment to consider this? Marcus asked, his mind racing for an escape from this situation. Of course, Dexthor said magnanimously. Sarah, show our guest to the observation deck. Give him time to appreciate what he's being offered. Lady Seralith moved forward with fluid grace. Please, follow me, Mr. Kane. Her voice was melodic, with an accent that made standard galactic common sound like poetry. Marcus followed her through another corridor to a private observation deck overlooking the station's central hub. The moment the door closed behind them, Sarah's entire demeanor changed. She moved close to him, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Please, you must accept his offer. Marcus stepped back, startled. What? I know how this looks, she said quickly, her golden eyes darting toward the door. But I'm not some helpless victim being traded away. This is my only chance to escape. Escape from what? Marcus asked, though he was beginning to understand. Sarah reached into a hidden pocket in her gown and produced a small data chip. My husband is trafficking weapons to rebel factions in the outer colonies. He's supplying both sides of conflicts, profiting from the chaos. I have evidence. 3 years' worth of transactions, communications, everything. Marcus looked at the chip, then at her. Why not just go to the authorities yourself? Because I'm his wife, she said bitterly. Under Zentari law, I'm his property. Any testimony I give is inadmissible. Any evidence I present would be dismissed as marital discord. But if I'm no longer bound to him, if the contract is transferred or dissolved. You can testify, Marcus finished. More than that, Sarah said. I can deliver this evidence to the Galactic Justice Bureau. Dexthor has been untouchable because of his political connections, but this will bring him down. Her hand touched his arm, warm despite her cool-toned skin. Please. If you refuse, he'll know I tried to use you. He'll dispose of me quietly, and all the evidence I've gathered will disappear. Marcus studied her face, looking for deception. He'd been lied to by experts, but he saw only desperate sincerity in those golden eyes. Why should I trust you? He asked. Because right now, Mr. Kane, we need each other. You need to collect your debt. I need to survive long enough to expose a war criminal. She smiled sadly. Sometimes the universe makes strange allies. Marcus had made his career on reading people, on knowing when someone was running a game. Every instinct told him Seralith was telling the truth. If I do this, he said slowly, Dexthor will send people after us. You understand that? I'm counting on it, she replied. The moment he tries to eliminate us, it proves he fears what I know. It makes the evidence more credible. You've thought this through. I've had 3 years to plan, Mr. Kane. I just needed the right opportunity. Her golden eyes held his. Are you that opportunity? The bargain. Marcus made decisions quickly, it was how he'd survived this long. This was insane, dangerous, and probably the worst idea he'd had in years. But something about Seralitha's courage, her determination to fight back despite impossible odds, resonated with him. All right, he said finally. We do this. But we do it my way. Relief flooded her features. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're about to make some very powerful enemies. They returned to Dexthor's chamber, where the noble waited with poorly concealed impatience. "Well, Mr. Kane? Have you made your decision?" Marcus forced himself to look at Saarlith the way Vexthor clearly expected him to, as property being evaluated. "The debt is 50,000 credits. You're saying she's worth that?" "Worth considerably more," Vexthor assured him. "Though I doubt a human would properly appreciate." "I'll take her," Marcus interrupted. "But I want the transfer contract properly documented. Legal and binding." Vexthor's eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course. I have the documents prepared." Of course he did, Marcus thought. This had been planned all along. The question was why. Was Vexthor simply disposing of a wife who'd become inconvenient? Or did he suspect what Sarah knew? The contract signing was surprisingly quick. Vexthor's efficiency suggested he wanted them gone as soon as possible. Within an hour, Marcus had legal documentation transferring Saarlith's marriage contract to him, effectively making him responsible for her under Zentari law. "A pleasure doing business with you," Vexthor said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Do enjoy your new acquisition, Mr. Kane. Though I should warn you, she can be quite troublesome." "I'll manage," Marcus replied evenly. As they left Vexthor's quarters, Marcus noticed the subtle shift in station security. Guards who'd ignored him on arrival now tracked his movement. Cameras turned to follow them. "They're watching us," Sarah murmured. "I noticed." "How long before your husband makes his move?" "Not long. He'll want this handled quietly, before we can leave the station." Marcus quickened their pace. "Then we need to move faster. The chase begins." They reached the reckoning without incident, though Marcus felt eyes on them the entire way. The moment they were aboard, he sealed the airlock and headed straight for the cockpit. "Strap in," he ordered, his fingers flying across the controls. "This is about to get interesting." Sarah settled into the co-pilot's seat, securing the harness with practiced ease. "You've done this before. Left stations under suspicious circumstances?" "More times than I can count." He initiated the departure sequence, watching the station's response. "Station control, this is the Reckoning requesting immediate departure clearance." "Negative, Reckoning," came the response. "You're flagged for customs inspection. Please proceed to." Marcus cut the connection and fired the engines. The Reckoning lurched away from the docking clamp, alarms blaring as he violated about a dozen station regulations. "Was that wise?" Sarah asked, gripping her armrests as Marcus threw the ship into a tight spiral to avoid an approaching security vessel. "Probably not. But neither was accepting a noble's wife as debt payment." He grinned despite the danger. "Hang on. The Reckoning wasn't built for elegance. She was a converted military transport, heavily modified for speed and durability." Marcus pushed her to full thrust, racing toward the jump point that would take them out of the system. 3 ships pursuing, Sarah reported, checking the sensors with surprising competence. "They're smaller, but faster." "Then we'll see how good their pilots are," Marcus said, adjusting course toward a nearby asteroid field. "You know how to work defensive systems?" "I can learn quickly." "Good. That panel on your right controls the aft shield harmonics. Keep them rotating, prevents them from getting a clean lock with their weapons." To his surprise, Sarah followed his instructions perfectly, her slender fingers dancing across the controls. The pursuing ships opened fire, energy bolts streaking past the viewport. "Shield holding," Sarah reported calmly. "They're trying to disable our engines." "They want us alive," Marcus realized. "Vexthor wants his evidence back, and probably wants to make sure you can't testify." "Then we should disappoint him." Marcus laughed despite their situation. "Lady Saarlith, I think we're going to get along just fine." He piloted the Reckoning through the asteroid field with reckless precision, using his knowledge of human reflexes and spatial awareness to make turns that the alien pilots couldn't anticipate. One pursuing ship clipped an asteroid and spun away, disabled. The other 2 were more cautious, hanging back but maintaining pursuit. We're approaching the jump point, Marcus said. Once we jump, we'll have a few hours before they can track us. Where are we going? Sarah asked. Somewhere Vexthor won't expect. Somewhere we can figure out our next move. He glanced at her, noting how calm she remained under fire. You're handling this well. I've been preparing for this moment for 3 years, Mr. Kane. I don't intend to waste it by panicking. The jump point loomed ahead. Marcus made the final calculations, feeling the reckoning shudder as the pursuing ships intensified their fire. Jump in 5 seconds, he announced. 4, 3, 2, 1. Reality twisted around them as the ship entered hyperspace, leaving their pursuers behind. The sudden quiet after the chaos was almost jarring. Marcus leaned back in his seat, releasing a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Sarah did the same, her opalescent skin shimmering with relief. We made it, she said softly. For now, Marcus cautioned. Vexthor won't give up. He'll have people at every major station looking for us. Then we don't go to major stations. Sarah turned to face him fully. We go to the one place Vexthor can't reach us. The Galactic Justice Bureau headquarters on Sentinel Prime. Marcus whistled low. That's halfway across the sector. Through some of the most dangerous space in the galaxy. I know, Sarah said. But it's the only place this evidence will matter. The only place my testimony will be heard. He studied her in the soft glow of the hyperspace tunnel streaming past the viewport. She'd just left behind everything she knew, was being hunted by her own husband, and had put her life in the hands of a stranger. Yet she sat there with her spine straight, her golden eyes determined. All right, Marcus said finally. Sentinel Prime it is. But first, we need supplies, and I need to know exactly what we're carrying. Sarah produced the data chip again. Everything is here. Weapons shipments, financial transactions, communications with rebel leaders. Enough to prosecute not just Vexthor, but his entire network. That's going to make you a very popular target. I'm aware. She met his eyes steadily. Are you having second thoughts, Mr. Kane? Marcus, he corrected. And no. I gave my word. I see things through. A small smile touched her lips. Marcus, then. And you may call me Sarah. Sarah. He nodded. We've got a long journey ahead. You should rest. The cabin's small, but the bunk is comfortable enough. What about you? I'll take first watch. Old habit. She rose gracefully, pausing at the cockpit entrance. Marcus? Thank you. For believing me. For helping me. Don't thank me yet. We've got a long way to go, and a lot of people who want us dead. Nevertheless. Her expression softened. In my 3 years of marriage, I forgot what it felt like to have someone act with honor rather than calculation. You could have walked away. You didn't. After she left, Marcus sat alone in the cockpit, staring at the streaming lights of hyperspace. He'd come to collect a simple debt and somehow ended up with a fugitive alien noblewoman, evidence that could topple a weapons trafficking network, and more trouble than he'd seen in years. But as he thought about Sarah's courage, her determination to fight back against impossible odds, he found himself smiling. What the hell have I gotten myself into? He muttered to the empty cockpit. The stars offered no answer, but Marcus found he didn't need one. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. Not just collecting a debt, but helping someone who deserved help. That was worth more than any fee. Evasion through the nebula. Marcus woke 6 hours later to find Sarah in the cockpit, studying the navigation charts with intense focus. She'd changed from her elegant gown into practical ship clothes she'd found in the storage lockers, simple gray pants and a fitted black top. Her moonlight hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and somehow she made even this basic outfit look elegant. You're supposed to be resting, he said, settling into the pilot's seat. I did. 4 hours. Luminari require less sleep than humans. She gestured at the star charts. I've been planning our route. If we cut through the Crimson Nebula, we can shave 3 days off our journey to Sentinel Prime. Marcus leaned forward, examining her proposed route. The Crimson Nebula is dangerous. Ionization storms, rogue asteroids, and it's a favorite hiding spot for pirates. But Vexthor's ships won't follow us there. Their sensors can't penetrate the interference, and his captains are too cautious to risk their vessels in those conditions. She turned to him, her golden eyes reflecting the navigation display's soft glow. You said we need to go where he won't expect. This is where he won't expect. Marcus considered. She was right. Vexthor employed professional mercenaries, not risk-takers. They'd stick to known routes, set up ambushes at predictable locations. All right, he agreed. The Crimson Nebula it is. But I'm piloting. Those storms can shred a ship if you don't know what you're doing. Sarah smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. I've been studying your defensive systems instead. They're quite sophisticated for a ship this size. I've made modifications over the years. Helps when people occasionally shoot at you. How often is occasionally? More often than I'd prefer, less often than I probably deserve. They worked together in comfortable silence, preparing the ship for the nebula crossing. Marcus found himself impressed by how quickly Sarah learned. She asked intelligent questions, understood his explanations immediately, and anticipated what needed to be done next. The entrance to the Crimson Nebula loomed ahead like a wall of blood-red fog. Ionized gases swirled in hypnotic patterns, beautiful and deadly. Brace yourself, Marcus warned. This is going to get rough. The moment they entered, the reckoning shuddered as competing gravitation fields tugged at the hull. The viewport filled with crimson light, making it impossible to see more than a few hundred meters ahead. Marcus flew by instruments and instinct, watching the sensors for the telltale spikes that indicated ionization storms. When the first one appeared on his screen, he adjusted course smoothly. Storm ahead, Sarah announced, monitoring the secondary display. Reading massive electrical discharge. I see it. Rerouting power to forward shields. They flew through the storm's edge, lightning crackling across the ship's hull. Alarms blared as systems strained under the electrical load. Shields holding at 70%, Sarah reported, her voice remarkably calm. But we're accumulating ionization on the hull. It'll discharge when we exit the nebula. Just needs to stay below critical levels until then. Another storm appeared, then another. Marcus navigated between them like threading a needle, using every bit of skill he'd developed over 15 years of flying through dangerous space. You're good at this, Sarah observed during a brief calm between storms. Had good teachers. And enough close calls to learn from my mistakes. Is that how you got those scars? Marcus touched the line across his cheekbone unconsciously. This one? Bar fight on Kepler Station. Guy didn't like that I was collecting a debt from his brother. And the other? Debris from a ship explosion. My own ship, actually. Long story involving a cargo of unstable exotic matter and a very angry Vexillian merchant. Sarah laughed, the sound like music in the cockpit's tense atmosphere. You live an interesting life, Marcus Kane. Interesting is one word for it. He glanced at her. What about you? How does a Luminari end up married to a Zentari weapons trafficker? Her expression clouded. Not by choice. The revelation. They were deep into the nebula, hours from either exit, when Marcus suggested they take a break. The ship's autopilot could handle the current sector, which was relatively clear of storms. They moved to the small galley, where Marcus prepared something that loosely resembled coffee. Sarah accepted the cup with amusement. Is this what humans consider a beverage? It's what this human considers necessary for staying awake. Fair warning, it tastes terrible. She sipped it carefully, her expression suggesting he'd been optimistic about its quality. Accurate assessment. They sat across from each other at the small table. In the dim light of the galley, with the crimson nebula glowing beyond the porthole, the moment felt strangely intimate. You don't have to tell me, Marcus said quietly. About Vexthor. About how you ended up in that situation. I want to, Sarah replied. She set down her cup, her slender fingers tracing patterns on the table's surface. I wasn't always Lady Saralith, noble wife of a Zentari lord. 5 years ago, I was Sarah Brightstar, justice advocate for the Luminari Coalition. Marcus sat back, surprised. Justice advocates were lawyers and investigators, highly trained and deeply respected. I specialized in trafficking cases, she continued. Weapons, contraband, sometimes people. I'd put away 3 major criminal networks and was building a case against a 4th when I received a dinner invitation from Lord Vexthor. Let me guess. The 4th network. Connected to it, yes. He was charming, cultured, claimed to be a legitimate businessman interested in establishing trade relationships with the Luminari Coalition. Her golden eyes darkened with memory. I was flattered. Luminari and Zentari rarely interact socially. I thought perhaps I'd misjudged him, that my suspicions were just professional paranoia. He targeted you specifically. I realized that too late. The dinner was wonderful. The conversation was engaging. I drank wine that was probably worth more than my annual salary. She paused. I don't remember anything after that until I woke up married to him. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. He drugged you. A Zentari neural suppressant combined with a compound that induces suggestibility. By their laws, the marriage ceremony was legitimate. I apparently consented to everything, signed all the contracts, even smiled for the official recordings. Her voice remained steady, but Marcus could hear the pain beneath it. My family received a generous bride price. My coalition credentials were revoked. Everything I'd built was gone in one night. That's not legal under galactic law. No, but enforcing galactic law against a powerful Zentari noble with political connections? She shook her head. My complaints were dismissed as marital discord. The justice advocates I'd worked with couldn't help me without proof, and Vexthor controlled my access to everything. So you started gathering evidence. It was all I could do. He thought he'd broken me, turned me into a decorative wife who smiled at his parties and stayed quiet about his business. He never suspected that I was documenting everything, building a case file exactly the way I'd been trained to do. Marcus reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Her skin was cooler than human normal, but warmed at his touch. You're remarkably strong, Sarah. I'm remarkably angry, she corrected. Vexthor took 3 years of my life. He's taking years from thousands of others, profiting from conflicts that kill innocents. I want him to pay for that. He will. We'll make sure of it. She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers with his. The gesture felt natural, right in a way that transcended their different species. Thank you for believing me. Back at the station, you could have walked away. I couldn't, Marcus admitted. The moment I saw you, something in your eyes told me you were fighting. I've never been good at walking away from a fight that matters. They sat there for a moment, hands joined, the crimson nebula painting everything in shades of red and shadow. Marcus, Sarah said softly. Why do you do this? Collect debts, I mean. You're clearly intelligent, capable. You could do anything. He considered the question. Honestly? It's simple. Clear rules. Someone owes something, I collect it, everyone knows where they stand. After years of chaos, of fighting and conflicts where nothing was clear, I needed that simplicity. But you're not collecting debts now. You're protecting me. Maybe I'm collecting a different kind of debt. One the universe owes to people who've been cheated. He squeezed her hand gently. Or maybe I just recognized someone worth protecting. Sarah's golden eyes searched his face. Humans fascinate me. Luminari are cautious, calculated. We plan for every contingency. But humans, you leap first and figure things out in midair. Is that a criticism? It's an observation. One I'm finding increasingly appealing. She leaned closer. My people would consider what we're doing incredibly reckless. What do you consider it? Necessary. Important. She paused. Exciting. The proximity between them had decreased without either quite noticing. Marcus could see the subtle variations in her opalescent skin, the way it caught and reflected light in ways human skin never could. Her scent was faint but pleasant, like starlight on water. The ship's alarm shattered the moment. The ambush. Multiple contacts, Marcus said, already moving toward the cockpit. Coming in fast. Sarah was right behind him, strapping into the co-pilot seat as Marcus checked the sensors. 4 ships had appeared from the nebula's interference, surrounding them in a tactical formation. How did they find us? Sarah asked. They must have had ships waiting at every possible route out of the system. We got unlucky. Marcus's hands flew across the controls. Or they planted a tracker on us somehow. On the ship or on me, Sarah realized. Dexthor could have embedded a tracker in my jewelry, my clothes. Worry about that later. Right now, we need to survive. The lead ship hailed them, the communication screen showing a Kraith mercenary, his scaled face split in a predatory grin. Disable your engines and prepare to be boarded. Lord Vexthor offers generous terms for your cooperation. And if we don't cooperate? Marcus asked, though he was already plotting evasive maneuvers. Then Lord Vexthor's terms become substantially less generous. Your choice, human. Marcus cut the communication. Sarah, transfer all available power to shields and engines. We're going to run. There are 4 of them. I've faced worse odds. He pushed the Reckoning into a sharp dive, using the nebula's ionization storms as cover. Usually. Energy blasts streaked past the viewport as the mercenary ships opened fire. Marcus threw the ship into evasive maneuvers, but the mercenaries were skilled pilots, anticipating his moves. Shields at 60%, Sarah reported. They're trying to disable us, not destroy us. A particularly violent impact rocked the ship. Sparks flew from a control panel, and an acrid smell filled the cockpit. Fire in the starboard power coupling, Marcus said through gritted teeth. Can you reach the emergency suppression controls? Sarah was already moving, pulling open an access panel and working the manual controls. The smell dissipated as the fire suppression system activated. Another impact. Marcus watched the shield readings drop to 40%. I'm going to try something stupid, he announced. Given our current situation, that seems appropriate. Despite everything, Marcus grinned. I'm heading straight into that ionization storm ahead. It'll overload their sensors, give us a chance to lose them. It will also overload our sensors. That's the stupid part. He pushed the Reckoning toward the massive electrical storm. The mercenary ships hesitated, then followed, unwilling to lose their prey. The moment they entered the storm, all hell broke loose. Lightning arced across the hull, systems sparked and failed, and the ship bucked like a living thing trying to throw them off. Marcus! Sarah shouted over the chaos. He saw it at the same moment, a massive asteroid, appearing suddenly from the electrical interference, directly in their path. Marcus pulled hard on the controls, the ship responding sluggishly with damaged systems. They missed the asteroid by meters, metal screaming as they scraped past. Behind them, one of the mercenary ships wasn't as lucky. It clipped the asteroid and spun away, trailing debris and atmosphere. 3 left, Marcus said, fighting to keep control as they burst out the other side of the storm. But the maneuver had cost them. Warning lights flashed across every panel. The shield generator was offline, the starboard engine was running at 30% efficiency, and something important sounding was making a grinding noise. We can't take many more hits, Sarah said. As if to prove her point, another energy blast struck the ship, this time without shields to absorb the impact. The Reckoning shuddered, and Marcus felt rather than heard something important break. Engines failing, he announced, watching the power readings plummet. We're losing thrust. The mercenary ships moved in for the kill, forming up in attack formation. Marcus made a decision. Sarah, there's an emergency beacon in that locker. The red one. A distress beacon? Not exactly. It's a combat beacon. Military frequency. Any Terran defense ships in range will respond. And if there aren't any? Then we tried. He met her eyes. Do it. She activated the beacon as Marcus used the last of their engine power to position the ship behind a large asteroid, buying them precious seconds of cover. We're sitting targets, Sarah said quietly. Maybe. But we're not giving up. One of the mercenary ships came around the asteroid, weapons charging. Marcus watched it approach, his hand on the damaged thruster controls, calculating angles and timing. What are you doing? Sarah asked. Protecting you. He glanced at her, and in that moment, she saw everything he felt written in his expression. Determination. Defiance. And something softer, something that made her breath catch. The mercenary ship fired, and Marcus hit the thrusters, using their last burst of power to spin the reckoning. Instead of striking the cockpit, the blast hit the cargo bay. The impact threw Marcus against his harness. Pain exploded in his shoulder as something sharp struck him. He felt wetness spreading across his shirt, warm and sticky. Marcus. Sarah was at his side instantly, her hands pressing against the wound. You're hit. Just a scratch, he managed, though the pain suggested otherwise. Another ship approached, weapons powering up for the killing shot. Then, like an answer to a prayer Marcus hadn't quite believed in, space itself seemed to tear apart as 3 Terran Defense Force ships dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons already hot and tracking the mercenary vessels. Unidentified vessels, this is TDF Valiant. Stand down immediately or be destroyed. The mercenaries fled, vanishing into the nebula's interference rather than face military ships. We're saved, Sarah whispered, her hand still pressed against Marcus's wound. Told you, Marcus said, his vision starting to blur at the edges. TDF always responds to distress beacons. That wasn't a distress beacon, you said. I lied. Didn't want you to worry. Despite everything, Sarah laughed, the sound breaking into something that might have been a sob. You stubborn, reckless, wonderful human. The last thing Marcus saw before darkness claimed him was her face, her golden eyes bright with tears, and the thought that if he had to get shot, at least it was for something worthwhile. The stand. Marcus woke in a medical bay, the clean white walls and antiseptic smell immediately identifying it as a military facility. His shoulder throbbed with a deep, persistent ache that suggested significant medical intervention. Welcome back, a familiar voice said. He turned his head carefully and found Sarah sitting beside his bed. She'd changed into what looked like borrowed TDF fatigues, her moonlight hair loose around her shoulders. Her golden eyes were red-rimmed, suggesting she'd been crying. How long? He asked, his voice rough. 18 hours. You were injured worse than you realized. The blast fragment pierced your shoulder and lodged near your lung. Her hand found his, gripping it tightly. The doctor said if you'd tried to move after being hit, it might have shifted and punctured something vital. Good thing I stayed still then. You spun the ship to protect me, putting yourself in the line of fire. Yeah, well. You're carrying evidence worth dying for. Don't. Her voice was fierce. Don't diminish what you did. You saved my life. Marcus squeezed her hand. You saved mine first. Gave me something worth fighting for. Before Sarah could respond. R. Continue. D. The door to the medical bay opened. A TDF officer entered, her uniform bearing the insignia of a commander. Mr. Kane, Lady Saralith. I'm Commander Zhang. I have some questions about the attack you endured. Over the next hour, they explained everything, Vexthor's weapons trafficking, Sarah's evidence, the mercenary attack. Commander Zhang listened with professional attention, making notes. The data chip you provided checks out, she said finally. We've already transmitted copies to the Galactic Justice Bureau, along with testimony about the attack. This is bigger than we initially thought. Lord Vexthor has connections to at least 5 major conflicts across 3 systems. Will there be arrests? Sarah asked. Already happening. We've coordinated with GJB enforcement. As of 2 hours ago, Lord Vexthor and 17 members of his network were taken into custody. Commander Zhang smiled. Your evidence is ironclad, Lady Saralith. This will likely be the largest weapons trafficking prosecution in a decade. Sarah's hand tightened on Marcus's. And my marriage contract? Nullified under coercion laws. The GJB has already processed the dissolution paperwork. You're a free citizen, Lady Saralith. For the first time since Marcus had met her, Sarah's composure completely broke. She bent forward, pressing her face against their joined hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Commander Zhang tactfully excused herself, leaving them alone. Marcus freed his good hand and stroked Sarah's moonlight hair gently. It's over. You did it. We did it, she corrected, looking up with tears streaming down her face. I couldn't have done this without you. Sure you could have. You're the bravest person I've ever met. Brave? She laughed through her tears. I'm terrified. For 3 years, I've been focused on this moment, on bringing Vexthor down. Now that it's done, I don't know what comes next. Marcus shifted carefully, making room on the medical bed. Come here. Sarah hesitated only a moment before climbing up beside him, careful of his injury. She fit against his side perfectly, her head resting on his uninjured shoulder. What comes next, Marcus said, is whatever you want. You're free, Sarah. Truly free. You can go back to being a justice advocate, you can travel, you can do anything. What will you do? Me? I'll heal up, fix the reckoning, go back to collecting debts. He felt her stiffen against him. Just like that? We go our separate ways? Unless. He paused, his heart suddenly racing in a way that had nothing to do with his injury. Unless you want a partner. She lifted her head to look at him. A partner? Turns out I'm pretty good at helping people who've been cheated by powerful bastards. And you're pretty good at fighting corruption. Seems like we could make a good team. Is that a business proposal, Marcus Kane? Partially. He met her golden eyes. Partially it's me saying that the last few days with you have been the most alive I've felt in years. Partially it's me admitting that somewhere between collecting a debt and getting shot protecting you, I stopped thinking of you as a job and started thinking of you as more. More, she repeated softly. Yeah. More. He reached up to touch her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. I know it's crazy. We're different species. We've known each other less than a week. But humans are good at crazy. Sarah smiled, the expression transforming her face. Luminari are supposed to be logical, cautious. We're supposed to plan everything carefully. And I find I don't care about what I'm supposed to do anymore. She leaned down, her lips brushing his gently. Yes. Yes to which part? All of it. The partnership. The team. The more. She kissed him again, deeper this time. Especially the more. When they parted, Marcus was grinning despite the pain in his shoulder. So we're doing this? Taking on corrupt nobles and criminal networks together? It seems we are. Sarah settled back against his shoulder. Though perhaps we could invest in better shields for your ship. Our ship, he corrected. If we're partners. Our ship then. They lay together in comfortable silence, watching through the medical bay window as stars drifted past. Somewhere out there, Vexthor sat in a cell awaiting trial. Somewhere out there, other powerful people were abusing their positions, cheating those weaker than them. But now they had a team. A partnership. A purpose. New beginnings. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in a shipyard watching technicians install new defensive systems on the Reckoning. His shoulder still ached, but the doctors had cleared him for light duty. "The enhanced shields are impressive," Sarah said, reviewing the specifications on a datapad. "And the upgraded sensors will help us track corruption networks more effectively." "You're really getting into this partnership thing." "I spent 3 years helpless. Now I have the chance to help others who are trapped the way I was." She smiled at him. "Besides, the pay is better than I expected." The Galactic Justice Bureau had offered them a substantial reward for the evidence that brought down Vexthor's network. Combined with Marcus's debt collection fees, they had enough to upgrade the ship and fund their operations for at least a year. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, slipping an arm around her waist. Sarah leaned into him, her opalescent skin catching the shipyard lights. "About leaving my old life? No. About trusting a debt collector who accepted a duchess's payment? Never. I still can't believe that happened." "Neither can I. It's the most illogical, improbable thing I've ever done. And it's the best decision I've ever made." They kissed, the gesture now familiar and right, no longer strange despite their biological differences. "Commander Zhang sent us a message," Sarah said when they parted. "She has 3 potential cases. Nobles abusing their positions, people who need help." "Already? We haven't even finished the upgrades." "Apparently word spread about what we did. People are reaching out." Her golden eyes sparkled with determination. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus looked at his ship, their ship, being transformed into something that could take on the galaxy's most powerful criminals. He looked at Sarah, brilliant and fierce and everything he'd never known he needed. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." They'd started this journey as strangers brought together by a gambling debt. Now they were partners, lovers, and something more profound that transcended species and circumstance. Marcus had gone to collect 50,000 credits and left with something infinitely more valuable, a partner who believed in justice, a purpose that mattered, and a love that proved humans and aliens weren't so different after all. The Reckoning lifted off from the shipyard a week later, its new shields gleaming, its weapons upgraded, its crew ready for anything. In the cockpit, Marcus and Sarah sat side by side, reviewing their first case together. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," she confirmed. And together, they jumped into hyperspace, toward new adventures, new challenges, and a future they would face as partners in every sense of the word. Behind them, the station dwindled to a point of light. Ahead, the stars beckoned with infinite possibilities. It had started with a debt. It became something neither could have predicted. And now, it was just the beginning.